How's everybody doing? Good. You guys ready to roll back there? It's good to see everybody. And first and foremost, obviously we had some news coming out this weekend about some guys that have been disciplined, due to their actions and choices. It's something that, that obviously I'm very disappointed, and at the same time, swift and quick action was taken. With that, we've had some guys not with us, been suspended from team activities, will not go to Michigan, and will not play in that game. Anything further from there, obviously, we've got a lot of time between then and whatever the next thing is. So at that point, you guys read the statement and know what's happening. So we'll kind of move from there. But I will say this, sometimes through some adversity or when things are a little rocky, it's really interesting how you see, how you kind of see your team kind of gel together. And what do I mean by that? We had an unbelievable scrimmage on whatever day that was, Friday. And some guys really stepped up, and it was great to see. There was some really good performances on both sides of the ball. I saw a unit, or a team unit that really stepped up and played. And probably where I was more excited than anything was the actual day after the scrimmage, which I talked to our guys about, and he even showed film of the past where, that next day guys are kind of moping around and feeling sorry for themselves from the 100 and whatever plays it was that we were able to get in. And yet, you know what, they chose to come to the field and get better, and that was really exciting. I think part of that is the youth that we have, and really that youth seeing opportunity to get in and play. We had some guys make the team in that scrimmage, and really the practices afterward. You're going to ask who those guys are. Well, you'll see them play, okay? And that's pretty exciting. So the quarterbacks, all three handled the first unit really well. I think when we were with the twos and the threes with those guys, Malik moved those threes pretty well. I thought Luke had, especially in our overtime period, did some really good things with the twos on that unit. I thought Felipe's accuracy was pretty good, and he was able to show his arm strength as well, which was fun. So what does that do as far as Edgar's question that's going to come up, who's the starter? Edgar, we're working on it, all right? So I'm just saving you that, all right? So you don't need to push that button right now. It's already rolling? All right, good. I like that. But, from an injury standpoint, okay, getting to your spot right now. There we go. Get your fingers moving. The guys that had been held out, that haven't been practicing, C.J. McWilliams still with a bad string. Kylan's about ready to go, but he's had a bad string. Quincy had a little bit of flare-up with that. Quincy Linton, has had a little bit of flare-up with that foot, but he will be back. Garrett Stevens, good news there is we didn't need to do any surgery on it, but he's going to be out for a while. Let's see. Mark Thompson, actually yesterday, had a little thing in his shoulder, nothing surgical or anything like that, but he was held out and will be held out today. C. Lou should be back today. And Wani Taylor, who we held from the scrimmage simply because of a leg deal, but he's ready to go. That's not a problem, but he didn't practice in the scrimmage, but was there, went through individual on Saturday, and then obviously yesterday's practice. So he'll be back as we go. Really looking forward to these next 2 days, which our guys know and are aware of are going to be really difficult on them as we stress them and really work on how they think on their feet when they're a little bit tired. So I'm looking forward to see these 2 practices as we get moving, and we'll start to really get into some goal line short yardage stuff, especially in tomorrow. So, but other than that, questions?
Regarding the suspensions, it's been reported a couple places that it was due to a misuse of funds. Is paying back part of the equation in terms of how long those suspensions could go?
Obviously, anytime there's choices made, you gotta make up for whatever happened. These guys are doing that, and it's interesting when you think about and even my disappointment. I mean, let's call it the way it was and the way it is, and yet it's guys that made choices, and then what do? You take something away that really means something to them. And the one thing, it doesn't matter who you're disciplining. What is it that really means something to them? And in this case, their ability to not be around the team. They're not obviously going to go play in one of the greatest stadiums there is on national television. Those are things that hurt, and I think that they know, and our guys know that, look, there's a lot to this, and yet what do we learn from it? And I think that's an important lesson.
And then kind of going off of that, Antonio Callaway is a guy that had already experienced that. He's been away from the team before. Is this, I mean, you talked about really being positive about him kind of turning the corner. Where do you see things with him right now? Is it especially frustrating now that it happens again?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just Antonio. I mean, it hurts, and yet it's my responsibility. And as I've said before, the thing you really get out of coaching and the thing that really means so much are those phone calls you get 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road from guys that maybe had made some mistakes along the way. I don't know if this will be one of those, and yet the instances that I've gotten those about guys that actually have families that have said thank you. And time will tell, and yet, you know what, it's a learning experience. And I think it's good for all your guys to know there's a consistency, and yet, there's a severity to the choices that we make. So,
obviously, he was a big playmaker. How do you kind of compensate for that? Do you feel you're in a position to be able to do that now?
It's I guess I obviously didn't say it, but really to see where we were in that scrimmage, and then Saturday and Sunday, and to see the guys that have stepped up in those spots. I thought really Brandon Powell really showed up, especially in that scrimmage, which was great to see, and yet part of that is the quarterbacks got him the ball, right? And that's part of it. I think when you look at Freddie and Josh and what they've done, being able to cross-train now a little bit with Dre, who's back to 100%. It's great to see him running. And Kadarius Toney, this guy's something. He needs to touch it. It's pretty cool to see him out there. Go ahead, Edgar. I'll go ahead and say that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Your fingers are flying right now. I like that.
Well, it was
You make sure you ice those when we're done, okay?
It was about Kadarius Toney. It was positive. But back to Antonio. I mean, you've stood up here a number of times and talked about him, unlike the other 6 guys. I mean, does there get to be a limit of what you're going to accept in terms of behavior from him?
Absolutely, and yet at the same time, the individual circumstances, they'll be handled and dealt with for the severity that it is. And as I said, the one thing I will do is I'll continue to help. I'll continue to be there. I'll continue to support. But obviously, the consequences, you know, you make your own bed, man. And I would imagine some of you might have dealt with that at some point in your life in different things that you've done or even had to do from that standpoint. And yet I'll never turn my back on anybody. That's not what it's all about.
Is it frustrating considering you guys have one of the most high-profile season openers in program history really coming up?
You mean you're saying a couple of those that we've played in the past aren't high profile?
Yeah, this is up there.
This one's real?
This is up there.
Is it up there?
But
I think more than anything, it's cool where we're going to play. I mean, I'll just call it the way I am jacked to be able to say that this kid from Montana gets to go to this stadium, and I hopefully don't get hit on the sideline as I'm watching the big screen in the middle of the field. But man, it's exciting, and I know our guys are excited about it. And I think part of the punishment piece is not being a part of that is huge. It isn't, as I've stated before, it's not like, you know, as you go through, you have that, oh, they're going to miss the whatever game, right? But they're going to be there for the other game. Well, no, this is a big stage, and I know our guys are excited to go play it.
But it's frustrating as a staff that you're putting so much energy into dealing with this, sorting this out for the weekend when you're really, this is right on the horizon.
Yeah, and yet I think what it does, I go back to sometimes when adversity, it kind of rallies the troops a little bit, and that's been cool to see. And it's been great to see, you know, the enthusiasm of our team as we're going out there and, you know, next man up. You know, we've been through this since I've been here, and, you know, it is what it is. The punishment is there, and yet, you know what, it's time for somebody else to step up and go play, and that's what's going to happen.
Until Eastern Washington comes in, this will be your biggest game.
You know, I'm just glad we're not opening with them, you know.
Those 7 guys, specifically the freshmen, not being around the team, not being able to practice, things like that, how much does that set them back than the rest of the season, the rest of the year?
That's significant, and yet I go back to it. Think about if you had ever been in trouble, all right, not one time, but if that one thing that you really cared about was taken away from you, that's when it hurts. That's when it sinks in. And in these guys' case, part of that too is not being around their team. There's a real void here. I think that's hard for some people that haven't been involved in the team sport and even the athletic piece. You know, some people are hurt monetarily. Some people are hurt taking their video games away. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is in the households, right? I just know in these guys' case, it's going to be detrimental from that standpoint that you asked. And yet, they've got to understand that there's consequences.
And then I guess you address the team as a whole to tell them about this. What's the team's attitude? Long faces, heads down. What was the attitude when you?
Well, I think I kind of answered that. We had unbelievable practices, right? And they understand that they're wrong, and yet, you know, there's another 100 guys out there that are having a blast, doing what they love to do. And that's what I was able to see moving forward. Now, is he able to ask a question because he was not on time? Yeah, I don't. Is this legal? Is this? I don't. You were early. Oh yeah. We've seen this movie. Yeah, I got you.
I was late, but I'll ask a question.
All right. I just love it when there's honesty, right? That's good.
You got to be honest.
I love it. Go ahead.
Speaking of honesty, there's a lot of folks that feel going into the season that you guys have one of the best, if not the best, receiving core in the SEC because of what's happened. Is this a chance for those guys to show that?
Well, and I go back. The only evidence I have is based on what I've seen in those practices and what we've done moving forward. There's been really good production. I think the cross-train piece, which I was nervous, I'm just, as a coach, you're like, I wonder. And guess what? We found some pieces that fit together pretty good, so there'll be some personnel groupings moving forward as we develop plans for certain guys in certain spots that maybe they hadn't been before. And that's kind of one of the things when you talk about kind of next man up. There's some guys kind of hungry that it's been great to see.
And then at your linebacker position, certainly where you're at with your starters, you guys are in a good spot. Do the absence of the 3 freshmen, will that hurt you at all depth-wise?
Where it hurts, I think, more than anything is, and I've talked about it, the depth and then what we do in practice to be able to get those reps where we don't overload some of those other guys. I think that's where you see it more than anything. We got to get Kylan back. Right now he's been kind of just through individuals and that kind of stuff. But in the teamwork, we need to get that piece back in there because that's stress and putting some stress on some of those other guys with accumulative reps. Now, with that, Moon needs those reps. So this is a good thing because he's cross-training at a couple different spots. So he's been able to get some really needed stuff that maybe before he was only getting a little bit of, right?
Yeah.
Was Bob late?
No, I was late.
Okay, good. Okay.
I'll own up to it, Coach.
All right, good.
With the offensive tackle with Kadeem out, what are the bodies there? We've seen Tyler out there a little bit.
Yeah.
What are the other options there? Both your guys have been hurt, so.
Yeah, it kind of goes too. I think one of the things as coaches, what it does is force you into, where are those 9 guys and how do they fit when one or another goes down? Having Tyler being able to play out there, and I think that speaks for him a little bit about his understanding. Now, he's now played all 3 positions. He's obviously, you've seen him in at center, natural guard, being able to play on the edge. It allows us to put Fred out there a little bit as well, and which he started out and actually played. In fact, it was interesting when you look at us 2 years ago against this team. He actually was playing right tackle as a true freshman. So I think there the development really more so of the inside guys has allowed us to maybe make some of those moves.
Okay. And then anything new on MacArthur Burnett?
Yeah, he'll actually join us today at practice. This will be his first day out there, and excited to get him back.
Question for you. The tragedy over the weekend in Virginia. That same group that put it on, the white supremacist group, they're saying they may come to Florida. Have you discussed that with your players at all? And if you do, what will you say to them? What will be your message to them to prevent? I mean, in something like what happened in Missouri a couple of years, how will you handle that?
Right. I think first and foremost, I think Dr. Fox and our administration, we've been alerted of the possibility. I think first and foremost, any extremist group, I don't care, the nationalists, whatever they're called, is unacceptable. It's just not what we believe in here, and yet I also understand freedom of speech. I mean, that's what really our country was kind of founded on, right? And I think you guys live by that, am I right? There's something in there, right, that you guys kind of abide to all the time, isn't that sure? But we obviously do not in any way believe in any of their views, and I think our team understands that. I think when you go back to some of the great leaders of our country, peace, right, is really the greatest thing you can do. And so to react to it or overreact to it, no. what makes extremists nervous is when they can't get to you, right? Because you're true to your beliefs, and you know what? It's a bad deal.
Yeah, I hate to follow up on something serious with another scrimmage question, but and you were rolling through stuff fast.
Well,
but,
you guys are kind of bouncing around today. I like this.
But
you know, have you guys ever watched Captain Kangaroo? You remember when you used to follow the
When I was
ping
like
pong
4.
ball? You remember? No, I'm having flashbacks right now. All right.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it too. But there was another piece in Captain Kangaroo. Yeah. There you go.
I remember him.
Thank you. I love that. You win the trivia for today. All right.
What was my question?
Yeah, I love it.
I'm kidding.
Back to the scrimmage.
Defensively,
Yeah.
some guys stand out.
Here's what, and I didn't, hit that, and it's something I actually had, believe it or not, in my notes. But the thing I saw for the first time when I saw that first unit come out, the aggressive nature and their ability to play free and rally to the ball, I think that's something that really stood out to me. The defensive front, those guys are pretty decent. We got some guys there. Pretty excited about that. But more than that, I'm probably as excited about how free they played in the secondary, especially some of the young guys who are going to be playing significant snaps for us. There was a drop-off when we got in some areas with the twos that we need to step up to create the depth. There's no doubt in that, about that. And yet, you know what? They're getting the opportunity to go do it and prove it. So that's why I say these next 2 practices are going to be really important for that standpoint. But overall, man, the speed in which they played, that was pretty cool.
I'm going to Captain Kangaroo back to what you started
Okay.
this with. When we spoke in May after Callaway, one of Callaway's other choices, you said you hit bumps in the road as you go through life. The thing is what you learn from those bumps.
Right.
Had you gotten a sense that Callaway had started learning from those
You
bumps?
know, I'm telling you, man, when you talk about the disappointment piece, I saw these strides, right? And then, sometimes you take a step back. And yet, I'm sure he's not the only one that's ever done that. And yet, it's my responsibility to keep teaching. And as all our players, not him, all our players, they know that I support them, and yet they're also going to pay for their choices. And something we talk about even when it comes to the playing piece, and yet it really applies to life sometimes, is your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear what you say.
The defensive players have taught us about playing fast also. Has Randy simplified some things so they can play faster maybe?
I think we were forced maybe to simplify because of the youth. You know what I'm getting at? Which maybe cut some other guys. And yet, the one thing I do know about defense is if the offense, can look inside the playbook and know exactly what you're doing, these coordinators are going to pick you apart. So our ability to get in and out of different things, and yet maybe not having as many checks, but rather simplifying who and what, I think is what we've done. But I think that's more of a product of the experience. But it's good to hear that those guys are saying that, because they, as I said right there, their actions spoke very loudly when you turn on the film.
Coming out of the first scrimmage, is there anything you have as kind of a focal point that you want to get done?
Yeah, I think I thought with the ones we were pretty good in tackling. I felt, and it kind of goes to maybe what I talked about, with the depth piece. I thought we didn't tackle well as a whole. I also thought when we got into the very last piece, which, was that being uncomfortable, but forcing yourself to play comfortable. We got sloppy. We put a ball on the ground, okay, which is unacceptable, all right? And, we had 2 drop passes back to back at a time when that's when you need to really force the action and come up with the plays. So we still have work to do, which is why I think they might ask their, who knows what their thoughts are, but I know that we're pushing them, and they have responded and really understand why we're doing what we're doing because of instances like that. I think anytime you're teaching and then you're able to say, this is the reason why, and here's what happened, when it shows up like that, they get it,
Kylan's been out for a while now. At some point, do you get worried about how much time he's missed and when?
Yeah, and no, I think with any player, it's you worry about that. And in his case, he's had a history of some bumps and bruises that we've got to understand that with that, maybe that having him is a bonus rather than relying on maybe a person to be there. You see what I'm getting at? So as you're doing it, man, I can't wait for him to get back because he's a really good football player. And yet, because of some of those things, we've got to be able to say, okay, what do we do now? And I think we're doing that.
And players like him, Brandon Powell's dealt with injuries throughout his career.
Yeah.
Do you treat them differently as far as practice and reps and maybe like a pitcher, like a pitch count?
Sure. It obviously, I think a great example of that would even be going back to when Antonio Morrison, and how we handled that. We're doing the same thing with Sherritt, which I also had in my note. He's, in fact, I was giving him a hard time. He actually played in team drills 2 days ago and then again yesterday. So that's really good for our team to get him back. And really more than anything, allow him to trust, on the injury. So, but yes, to answer your question, and that's something through our team doctors, obviously our training staff, in whatever the injury might be, putting together kind of that pitch count, that rep count, and really more so what kind of reps those are. Like in Jordan's case, where were those reps, early? How did it feel the next day? And then what can we move forward to? So that's something that we constantly do with our doctors and training staff. All right, guys. Appreciate you. Have a great day.